Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, today we need to talk about something that has been building in Formula One for months. After what happened at the Japanese Grand Prix, it exploded into the biggest off-track controversy of 2026 so far. Ferrari are furious. They've gone to the FIA and demanded answers. They're pointing at Mercedes and Red Bull, saying both are exploiting 2026 regulation loopholes others can't access. So the question in the paddock is simple: clever engineering or cheating? This story has two chapters, two controversies, two loopholes, both involving Mercedes. Both are driving Ferrari crazy, and I'll explain them clearly without the tech fog. By the end, you'll know exactly what's happening and why it matters for this championship. Let's go back to before the season even started. Because this started months ago, deep in the winter, while the cars were still being built. The first controversy is about engine compression ratios. Now, I know that sounds boring, but stay with me because this gets good. The new 2026 technical regulations reduced the maximum compression ratio in the cylinders from 18.0 to 16.0, meaning the engine was supposed to produce less power overall, and everyone starts from the same level. That was the intention. That was the rule. Simple enough. But here is where it gets interesting. The FIA measures this compression ratio at ambient temperature, meaning at room temperature, before the engine is running. And here is the thing about engines. They get hot, really hot. And when metal gets hot, it expands. It changes shape. And if you use very specific materials in very specific ways, your compression ratio in a cold test might be 16.0. But when that engine is screaming at full power on a racetrack, it creeps higher. According to multiple high-level sources, Mercedes and Red Bull found a way to use specially designed engine components that exploit thermal expansion, meaning the parts comply with the rules during cold static temperature checks. But once in operation and warmed up, the expanding components boost the compression ratio and therefore power. The engines literally pass the test and then perform beyond what the rules allow once they are actually running in a race. And how much difference does this make? Reports suggest the advantage could be worth around 15 horsepower and 0.3 seconds per lap. In Formula One, 0.3 seconds per lap is massive. That is the difference between pole position and the third row. That is the difference between winning a race and finishing fifth. Ferrari, Honda, and Audi were all sitting there watching Mercedes dominate and thinking, how? We prepared for years. We built these engines from scratch. Why are they so much faster? Ferrari reportedly filed formal complaints with the FIA, accusing Mercedes and Red Bull of discovering a way to enhance their engine performance beyond the legal limit. Ferrari also warned the FIA that any mid-season correction would likely come too late to negate the early advantage, and that it could take 6 or 7 races to restore a level playing field, by which point the championship could already be gone. Now here is the part that makes this genuinely complicated, and not just a black and white case of cheating. According to insiders, Mercedes did not act alone or in secrecy. They reportedly presented their compression ratio concept to the FIA at an early stage and received confirmation that it would comply with the regulations. So Mercedes went to the rulemakers, showed them what they were doing, got told it was legal, and then went ahead and built the whole engine around it. That is very different from secretly hiding something. But should the FIA let this stand, Ferrari would not have a new engine ready to respond until the summer of 2026 at the earliest. And Audi's James Key went even further, saying Audi will never accept Mercedes using an engine built around what could be an illegal interpretation all season long. Never accept. Those are strong words. The FIA has since ruled that Mercedes must make changes to their power unit by June 1st, with the previously investigated geometric compression ratio trick being outlawed by a change to the sporting regulations from the Monaco Grand Prix onwards. So the FIA basically said, it was legal, but we are closing it from Monaco, which means Mercedes got away with it for the first 5 races of the season and then had to change. Ferrari think that is an absolute disgrace, and honestly, it is hard to argue with them. But wait, that isn't even the latest controversy. At Suzuka, a second engine trick surfaced. It centers on the MGU-K, the electric boost motor that delivers punch out of corners and down the straights. Under 2026 rules, MGU-K deployment must step down in 50 kilowatt chunks, 1 per second. No slamming from full to zero. Think of a slow staircase down from full power. The reason is safety. At 300 kilometers per hour, a sudden cut can create dangerous speed gaps. Yet a loophole exists. Teams can shut the MGU-K off instantly, but that triggers a 60-second battery lockout, intended only for emergencies. In qualifying, they hit shutdown just before the line, holding the full 350 kilowatts to the flag. The lockout then covers the cool-down lap on the way to the pits, so the penalty barely stings. In a race, this would be catastrophic. You lose electric power for a full minute, you drop positions. But on a single qualifying lap, you deploy maximum power to the line, head to the pits, and the lockout burns off while you are sitting in the garage waiting. Ferrari noticed this at Suzuka qualifying and immediately went to the FIA demanding clarification. They accept that Mercedes and Red Bull are not technically breaking the rules as written, but they want to know why this loophole was not closed and whether it will continue to be legal. And the side effect that exposed the whole trick publicly? Remember at Suzuka when several cars suddenly appeared to lose power at high speed and were crawling through corners? That was the 60-second lockout activating at the wrong moment, drivers not managing the timing properly and finding themselves without electric power on a fast section. The FIA communicated with Mercedes about the trick after the Suzuka incidents, and the team stopped using it for the remainder of the weekend. Not because it was ruled illegal, but because the safety risk of getting the timing wrong was not worth the small qualifying benefit. Now the big question, is any of this cheating? Or is it genius engineering? Former Jordan technical chief Gary Anderson said it plainly. This sort of thing is there for everyone to exploit. In my book, it's not cheating, it's just pushing the limits. And there is truth in that. Every team in Formula One looks for gray areas in the regulations. That is the sport. But here is the difference that makes this feel different. Ferrari and Mercedes have clashed multiple times already over these 2026 regulations. First the compression ratio rules, then race start procedures, and now this MGU-K qualifying trick on top. It is 3 separate incidents in 3 races. Ferrari feel like they are being squeezed from every direction, and the FIA keeps finding ways to help the teams at the front. Fred Vasseur hinted that regulatory clarifications could make it a different championship when we reach Miami. Look at the standings. Mercedes leads the constructors. Antonelli leads the drivers. 3 races, 3 wins, 3 poles. Close these loopholes and the picture could change fast. Ferrari's quali pace closes, McLaren improves, and suddenly this might become one of the tightest title fights in years. Is it cheating? Maybe not by the letter of the rules. But is it fair? That is a much more complicated question, and the FIA has to answer it before lights out in Miami on May 3rd. Drop in the comments. Do you think Mercedes and Red Bull crossed a line here? Or is this just Formula One doing what it always does, rewarding the smartest engineers in the room? Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.